Thank you, Sakshi. I happily welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Muhammad Asif Siddiqui, to kindly come up on the stage and take your seat, sir. Apurvi, kindly escort sir to the stage. Thank you, Apurvi. May I now invite Professor Sanjoy Saxena, Dean, Faculty of Arts, University of Allahabad, to come to the stage and be seated. Dear sir, please come. Aditi, kindly help him to the stage. Let's have a big round of applause for our dignitaries here. Now I request Professor Sushil Kumar Sharma, Head, Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Allahabad, to come on the stage and take your seat, sir. Pragya. Thank you, Pragya. I call upon the stage. All right, that is already there. The convener of the seminar, Professor Manoj Kumar. Let's have a big round of applause. And our co-convener, Dr. Devashish Patel, Associate Professor, Department of English. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries to the inaugural session of this two-day seminar. And let's again welcome them on the stage with a big round of applause. As we say in our tradition, Atithi Devo Bhava. It is now time to express our gratitude and felicitate our dignitaries seated on the dais. I would like to request Professor S.K. Sharma, Head Department of English and Modern European Languages, to kindly welcome our chief guest, Professor K.G. Srivastava, and present Holy Basil Sapling and Alabasta as a token of our love and regard. May I now request Professor Jaya Chadha to come up on the stage and felicitate and present Holy Basil Sapling to our keynote speaker, Professor Muhammad Asif Siddiqui. I now invite Dr. Umesh Chandra, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to present a sapling and unvast to Professor Sanjoy Saxena, Dean of Arts, University of Allahabad. Thank you, Dr. Umesh. I request Dr. Pradeep Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Modern European Languages, to present Holy Basil Sapling and unvast to Professor Sushil Kumar Sharma, Head Department of English. Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. I urge Dr. Mona Agni Kotri, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Modern European Languages, to present a sapling and anniversary to the convener of this seminar, Professor Manoj Kumar. I request Dr. Yuvraj Helge, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Modern European Languages, to present a sapling and anniversary to co-conveners of this seminar, Dr. Devashish Patel. Thank you, Dr. Heron. I request Dr. Pratima Chaudhary to present a sapling to Professor Narayan, Head Department of Sanskrit, University of Allahabad. Kindly come forward now. Thank you, ma'am. And now, without much ado, I would like to invite Professor Manoj Kumar to accord a warm welcome to this August gathering. Professor Manoj Kumar.
Hello. Uh, Thank you, Dr. Sadar. So, actually, I have been given the task to formally welcome the guest in this national seminar. When I think about this national seminar, so there are various emotions attached to this seminar. There are so many things which is coming in my mind. And for example, we got the approval for this seminar in July 2023. And we were ready to organize the seminar, but an original plan of the seminar was to invite Honorable Jayanta Mahapatra into the seminar, and he was going to deliver the keynote address. But unfortunately, he passed away in August 2023. And then there was a discussion that what should we do now, whether we should organize or not. And finally, we took a decision after 6 months that yes, we have to organize it. And now we are going to organize in the remembrance of Jayant Mahapatra sir. The other things which are attached to this seminar is that for the first time we are going to hold this seminar, any seminar in this Ishwar Topa building. That when we were actually organizing this seminar, so there were so many actually reviews which we were receiving because this is a seminar which we are organizing in self-finance mode. We did not receive any grant from any agency of any government or non-government agency of India. So they were saying that it will be very difficult to get papers on one author because you are organizing a seminar only on one author. So it will be very difficult for you to get the papers. And we were also thinking the same before 7 or 8 days when we were having only 30 or 40 registrations. But after that, the things changed. And now we are having more than 170 registrations in this seminar. So this is actually something miraculous which happened. And the another thing which I want to say is that in this seminar we have invited the guests from all over India, and I want to welcome all of them. First of all, I would like to welcome Professor Asim Siddiqui sir, who accepted our invitation and who are here to deliver the keynote address. Welcome, sir. I also welcome Professor K.G. Srivastava sir, who is the chief guest of the ceremony, and he has worked as ex-VC of this university also. So thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome Professor Sanjay Saxena, sir, who is Dean, Faculty of Arts, and he actually is the person who help us in initiating the proposal for this seminar. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for coming. I also would like to welcome Professor Sushil Sharma, sir, who is the man behind this seminar, who is doing each and everything to make it successful. So I welcome you, sir. I also want to welcome Professor Sharma Vishwas, Professor Ranu Rinal, Professor K.M. Pandey, Professor Priyadashni Patnaik, and the guest and the teachers, retired teachers of the department who came here to grace this occasion. I welcome you all, sir. The I also would like to welcome all the participants because it is only because of their registration we are able to organize the seminar. So well, I welcome you all, and I would be failing my duty if I am not going to acknowledge the tireless efforts of my colleagues of the department who are working day and night to make this seminar successful. So I welcome you all the colleagues from this university, and I also would like to welcome the research scholars of the department who are working tirelessly to make this seminar successful. So I welcome you all. Thank you very much for coming in the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. May I now invite Professor Sushil Kumar Sharma, Head of the Department of English and MEL, to introduce the theme of the seminar. Uh,
Good morning to all of you. As you can see, the title of the seminar is Changing the World, Then Mahapatra's Contribution to Indian Poetry. We are the Department of English and Modern European Languages, but we should be conscious of the fact that English is not one of the languages that we should be looking. Despite this, Sahitya Academy has been awarding prizes in English. And why this Sahitya Academy is necessary? Because Sahitya Academy award prizes in 24 languages. And they say 24 languages, but one district. So that is the motto, and that keeps India together. And Jayant Mahapatra was the first Indian poet in English to be awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in 1981 for his collection Relationships. Now, the question is, can English be one of the mediums of creativity or creative actions? In the early part of 20th century, this question was very hotly debated. The question has been settled now, but with the coming of NEP 2020, this question once again is raising its head, whether English can be used creatively as a language, and particularly with the theories of decolonization emerging, and with the experience of Africa before us, the debate between Chenua Achebe and Boogie, whether English has got to be continued as a mark of colonization, or it has got to be accepted as a language, as an Indian language that has got to be uh, looked into, and therefore the relevance of this topic. Now, Indian English poetry. When I met Professor Jayanta Mahapatra for the first time, for the last time, in the month of June, I asked him this question. Sir, what about this Indian English poetry? Will you accept the term Indian poetry in English or Indian English poetry? And he immediately said, what is this Indian English? The issue of American English, British English, African English, and where are the authors, Indian authors who claim to be writing in Indian English? So that is another important question that needs to be discussed. When you wish to establish your identity world over, you say that you are an Indian, but when it comes to the language, he starts saying that we use British English or we use American English. As a matter of fact, one of our students, Brajvi Kachru, and his wife, Yamuna Kachru, they sitting in America, they started talking about Indian English, and ultimately this Indian English has been recognized as one of the legitimate varieties of English, and this has been accepted even in Microsoft various programs like the Word, etc. But what is the attitude of the Indian intellectuals towards the issue? That is once again an important issue that has got to be looked into. Another term, you see, Sahitya, I invoke Sahitya, there are two important histories available. One is by K.R.S. Iyengar and another happens to be by M.K. Nair. While K.R.S. Iyengar kept on changing the nomenclature. Earlier he used Anglo-Indian literature, then he used Indo-Indian literature, then he switched over to Indian writing English. M.K. Nair, after the consultations at Sahitya Academy, he stuck with this Indian English literature. So whether it is Indian English literature, so what the distinction between Indian English literature and Indian writing in English? So what happens to India and what happens to the Indian sensibility? That is another issue. And one of the charges against Indian writing in English happens to be that this happens to be a sort of derivative literature. So will this colonial hangover continue, or will this colonial hangover has got to be overthrown when particularly you are thinking of celebrating 100 years of your independence and you are already planning for what type of India do you envision? Vision 2047 that is being planned, and most of the seminars are being held under the aegis of Viksit Bharat India. Now, Jayanta published 27, around 27, maybe 28 books. Of these 28 books, 23 were in English. He started publishing his poetry in 1976. Now, more than 50 theses have already been completed. Yesterday, I was trying to look for the authentic data on the Show the Ganga website, and my patience exhausted after counting 50. As a matter of fact, Show the Ganga was pointing out some 4,000 some references where Mahapatra appears. So to find out as to how many theses were full-length theses on that, Mahapatra was of course to be tasked. But what happened to him in the later phase of his life? In the later phase of his life, he switched over to Oriya. And when I met him, he said, I am writing my autobiography in Oriya because nobody reads me in English. So trying to connect. And when I went looking for his house in Pune Bar, that was my first visit trying to locate his house. A person stopped on his scooter. He said, oh, Jayant Mahapatra. People from outside, they know him, but nobody cares for him in Tata. So that kind of connectivity and that kind of disconnect that is there because of the language. When you try to see that, you yourself have been disconnected from your own people, from your own land, despite the fact that in most of Jayant Mahapatra's works, Oriya and Oriya culture, Oriya people, Oriya land, this figures very prominently. And it may not be an exaggeration of the fact that Jayant Mahapatra may not be described as an Indian poet, if you simply describe him as an Oriya poet in writing in English, then you will not be missing much of the mark. Now, regarding the derivatory nature of Indian writing in English, there are two groups as a matter of fact. And Let me also quote B.K. Gopal from his Golden Treasury. Gokak writes, Indo-Anglian poetry starts as romantic poetry simply because it was born under romantic influences. It became Victorian because English romantic poetry became Victorian. It decided to go through a period of decadence because of the 90s were a period of decadence in English poetry. After decadence came the period of Georgianism, and Indo-Anglian poetry, loyal as always, suddenly became Georgian. When English poetry became modernist, Indo-Anglian poetry had no alternative but to do the same. It would only be natural to expect this, especially when one is dealing with poetry written in a second language. In fact, a similar impact of English literary movements is noticeable in the early history of America, Canada, and Australia, though English is the first language in these countries or becomes one after the first generation of the immigration settles down. Unquote. And Indian further goes on. Uh, Indo-Anglian poetry, like the rest of the modern Indian poetry, is Indian first and everything else afterwards. So now the emphasis changes. Indian. It has voiced the aspirations, the joys and sorrows of Indian people. It has been sensitive to the changes in the national climate and is striven increasingly to express the soul of India, the personality which distinguishes her from other nations. At the same time, its constant endeavor is to delineate the essential humanity and universality which make the whole world of kith and kin. And with the passage of time, the Indian poets have also developed poetic forms and employed different styles, varying from simple to complex, where polyphony to suit the theme, which get highlighted through idea and image that becomes picturesque, offering a fusion of thoughts and feelings. Now, I refer to the two groups of people. Now, this is one opinion where Gokak himself earlier was saying that this mixture happens to be derivative mixture, then he says that it has outgrown. And then there is another group of people who divide the literature between post-independence and pre-independence. And the pre-independence literature is basically trashed by these new groups. And in the new groups, one of the leaders happened to be our senior colleague Arvind Malhotra, hmm, who said that Tagore and particularly he named Arvindo, Sri Arvindo, 10,000 clients, sheer trash, right? So this is one stand. Another stand happens to be that modernist poetry happens to be the real poetry. Now, what is the basic difference between these two types of stands? One is very obvious. Till the time you do not trash the earlier one, the new things do not come up. So that could be a very simplistic thing. But the tone and tenor of the Indian climate, political climate, economic climate, social climate, intellectual climate, these are entirely two different things. Particularly the poetry that has emerged after 1980, when English tried to regain its importance, and all these people they tried to cater to the Western audience. Naturally, this makes them a type of what we call derivative uh, nature of the state. Uh, we can also classify this Indian literature in English into two categories. One, those published by the established presses, big multinational houses, and small time presses. Now, out of the 28 collections of Jayanta Mahapatra, the first one was published by Kolkata by an unknown, almost unknown publisher. The second one, yes, sir. So the second one by the Writers Workshop, third one by United Workshop. So there are only three or four that I could note down. That was dialogue. Yes, dialogue in 1971. Then life science by Oxford University Press in 1983. Selected poem again by OUP 1987, and A Whiteness of Gold by Penguin 1990. Uh, I also have the last collection of it that was published by a local publisher in Kannada. And he told me that whatever royalty he earns out of those books published by the local publishers, that goes to a particular NGO that serves people. So this is how the poetic journey of Jayant Mahapatra is taking shape. Uh, uh, I'm overwhelmed to see that more than 170 papers, 170 papers are there on Jayant Mahapatra only, though the last PhD thesis in my department perhaps was a decade ago under Professor Kogi Srivastava himself. Somebody explored missing equally through Indian essence. After that, in the Department of English, it is mainly the dramatists and the novelists that have been the focus. So poetry just out of the fashion. So despite this uh, changing trends, if 170 papers have come and 170 papers are willing to study Jayant Mahapatra, heads off to Jayant Mahapatra and your interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for setting a thought-provoking yet delightful tone for the rest of the program. I now request Professor Santosh Saxena, Dean of Arts, University of Allahabad, to share his views on this special occasion.
We've heard fairly heavy stuff on Jet Mahapatra. I think you're going to hear much of it in the next 2 days. So instead of trying to say very difficult things in the temptation like that, I'd like to recall my very little association with Mr. Mahapatra. When I met him for the first time, I think it was in Pune, and thereafter we met each other in England. And he gave me a collection of his poems called Temple, which was published by the Inaugural Press, which was run by Anna Rutherford. Anna Rutherford was the editor of the studying something like that, the Commonwealth Poetry, which was being brought out by somewhere one of these Scandinavian countries. And she was an Australian woman who had settled down in Sweden and Ukraine. So Mr. Mahapatra was trying to get some importance there on people from various Commonwealth countries. So I being an Indian immediately, please come and clap and sit in the front and do all kinds of things. So you are supposed to laugh and play with and every funny thing which he says. Even if it be a DJ, make sure that you laugh and you laugh rather loudly. So this is how it was. And then, as a token of friendship, I got this book. Then we met each other in Pune again. So Mr. Mahapatra had, I think, been promoted, and the general con. There were other poets also. There was Adil Tusawala, could be missing as well, and there was this Pratap Sharma, Day of the Turban, Cambridge man, and he was a successful novel which he had written, and he was a radio voice makeover. So, and he used to make huge amounts of money. He kept himself very well and did a film on Nehru in which he himself acted as Nehru and visited Allahabad. So I managed to get a scooter from somebody, a colleague from Pune University, and Mr. Mahapatra and I went around in that scooter in the Pune University campus. Then it is customary for people who are supposed to be important to greet the younger souls or more ordinary people. So then I did not know. Jayanta probably knew where the Pune University canteen was. We went to the canteen, and when we went there, he attracted some attention, and there were people who were there because of the conference. So from two, we became almost eight then. Mr. Mahapatra started becoming nervous because it was supposed to be his street, and he in a very expensive and generous manner said, "Well, you can order whatever you want to. It's a canteen. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है, बात कैसे नहीं? Eight people you are ordering, and then he started telling me, I am also like you, I'm just senior. I also have a family, I haven't got any money from these people. So this is how it was. I mean, then I realized that Jan was as ordinary or very similarly placed as any one of us in the university system. And there were some questions being raised about his promotion at Ravenshaw. So they said that he doesn't know any physics, that he doesn't know, I mean, what has he got to do with it? He may be writing poems and essays and articles, but this fellow is going to become, he's supposed to be a physicist. So Mr. Mahapatra was telling them that, well, it is not that I don't know any physics, I do the classes, and people were laughing at his face, especially the poets who believe that he had anything to do with physics at the highest level. And he said that he had written some papers in physics also. So it was like that. So he got the impression that he was one of us, and he also asked us to write in Hindi, and then he took time off to write something in India for his own team. So this is it. And in him I found a kind, unpretentious man who was conscious of the fact that we should not allow ourselves to be carried by the system. You see, he was living in the same society in this period, he was getting the same sort of salary, he could have been very better. He did not inherit government property, so where did the money come from? So, and I don't think he went to do the right on path. And we know about this money conversion to charity, great and far more than funds, conversion to charity, and during days of family in the forest. He said Mahapatras are prime. And you know how strong the families are in matters of faith. And can you imagine what my grandfather, great grandfather, they had been through so that he should have converted to Christianity. He told me himself. And how many people he suffer or die. So he was very sensitive about his Christianity. And he loved it. I mean, he said, he was through and through a Christian. But he was not a narrow-minded Christian, he was a narrow one. Because Odisha has been besieged with problems related to religion much longer back than us. Our thing is just 15, 20 years. Mr. Vajpayee will say, but in Odisha it has been here forever. So I think all these questions also relating to matter from religion or whatever. And you talk about these temples, and sometimes you can then different bodies. You believe in the God sitting inside. So this is it. It's important my allotted time, and that is. So thank you very much for allowing me to say.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next segment of the session, we have a launch of Dr. Daniel Hansen's edited book titled Sightlines, Viewpoints on Sushil Kumar Sharma's The Door is Half Open. Sightlines is a delightful collection of essays and interviews on Professor Sushil Kumar Sharma's collection of poetry, The Door is Half Open. And we are honored to have Dr. Hansen, who has joined us online. Congratulations. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for setting aside time for this national seminar informing the world to celebrate the launch of Sightlines, Viewpoints as Sushil, Kumar, Sharmas, the door is half open. We are very excited to bring this collection of essays into existence. One good thing a good poem does is to take a specific word and its sound and tie it to a universal truth. Oh, that is lovely. Does anyone hold a copy? Okay, wonderful. A good poem connects to a reader who is sharing general experience, but it helps us by the specific. With the writings that uses a specific set of thoughts and uses them to discover and discuss larger topics. The review articles of this book cover a large and rich variety of such topics. Many of the essays Brown Sharma's work in both Western English language poetry and in many writers, such as Helen Dean, Anthony, Mary Mohanty, Ravi, and Nadia Karayinsar in their essays, note the deep respect for nature and Sharma's work. The similar respect for humans is noted by Savitri, Shakati, and Ramji Madhav. Lady Shura discourses on Sharma's deeply human theme of hope. Rahu Damodar brings us a discourse on the ability to tradition. And many reviewers turn their gaze upon the speaker of the poems himself. Rama Rama notes on his human hand follows the path of his scholar who affirms his effort in her piece. Natasha Mirovinovich follows the common teacher as she explores Sharma's work in a beautiful journey through human history. The book also contains interviews about poetry and its place in our lives, conducted by Saeed Aman, Raja Abudi, Suresh Chandra Dubey, and myself. We are continuing analyzing the work of others with a long-standing and vital part of an active academic community. Our community is clearly alive and growing in media, as evidenced by this seminar and by this collection, which features essays and interviews by poets, editors, translators, critics, seminarians, undergraduate students, PhD students, postdoctoral fellows, instructors, and professors of all levels, and retired academicians. Those work provides components, principles, about programs, about chancellor, and dean, about vice chairman of associations and research networks, fellows from the Royal Asiatic Society and the Academy of Indo-Asian Literature, a winner of the British Council Merit Award for Short Story Contest, and a winner of the Best Teacher Award. Including from many cities and towns in India, from both coasts of the United States, from England, and from Serbia. The volume of essays in this work is astounding. Congratulations to all the contributors to this scholarship, and to Sushil for inspiring such scholarship in others. I especially want to note the contributions of the late Nikunjan Kishore Das and Suresh Chandra Dubey, and I hope this book will inspire their memories. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your editorial address, and congratulations once again to ma'am and sir. around a quick bio note of Dr. Daniel Hansen. Dr. Daniel Hansen is accomplished poet, editor, and educator. She is marketing director for Sunrise Publication and serves on their editorial board. Daniel's poetry has appeared in numerous prestigious journals and anthologies. As an author, Daniel has published three collections of poetry, which are Amshing Water, published in the year 2017, Fraying Edge of Sky, 2018, The Night is What It Is, which is going to be published next year. The third collection won her the Elixir Press Poetry Prize. Additionally, she has edited and co-edited several anthologies. She teaches poetry at the University of California, Irvine. Her dedication to poetry, education, and fostering creativity underscores her multifaceted contributions to the literary world. Thank you, ma'am, once again. Let's have a big round of applause for ma'am. We are privileged to have Professor Asim Siddiqui as a keynote speaker for today's inaugural session. Professor Muhammad Asim Siddiqui is a highly experienced professor and chairperson with a remarkable teaching tenure of around 30 years at Aligarh Muslim University. Throughout his career, Dr. Siddiqui has been actively involved in various facets of teaching, research, and administration. His teaching portfolio includes courses on contemporary literary theory, American literature, grammar, research methodology, film studies, and more. Notably, he has also taught at institutions beyond Aligarh Muslim University, such as Nalsar University, Hyderabad, and the University of Kashmir, Srinagar. As a researcher, Dr. Siddiqui has made significant contributions to literary criticism and cultural studies, with a focus on post-colonial literature, feminist theory, and the representation of identity in literature. His publications include several books, edited volumes, journal articles, book chapters, and book reviews, demonstrating a wide-ranging scholarly outlook. He has also presented papers at numerous national and international seminars, enriching academic discourse with his insights. Sir, I take this privilege to welcome you to enlighten us with your vast expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for that?
Thank you. Deep Executive Awards. It's my senior colleague and the teacher life to the chief guest, Jayanta sir, head of the department, Professor Sushil Kumar, sir. The convener of this conference, Mr. Manish Kumar, co-convener, and there. And I also see the ladies are there. So many other colleagues from Allahabad University and also from other universities and their students. I must say that I was really touched by the invitation that I received from Professor Sushil Kumar. And I must say that it is a great honor for me to have come here and to talk about something, to share my views about an important subject. Let me just share a few things about my impressions of Allahabad. When I was a student, my teachers actually used to talk about some of those great teachers of Allahabad University. And Professor Dastu, many others. And later also, I have learned and also read that the university has had a very distinguished tradition of writing, creative writing, and of course, teachers, students, and others they have contributed in a big way in English, Hindi. It is the contribution of the Department of English of Allahabad University simply stunning. Sushil Kumarji mentioned it in Mahapatra, of course, we all know him, and we also know how Professor Neelam Sen got the distinguished herself, and of course many others also. And there, I also got a chance to write something for e-Pathshala series, and Professor Sunita Parmar was the director of that particular program on women studies. So I must say that it is indeed uh, a rare honor for me to come here and speak. Professor Sharma identified some very important issues. I must say that he problematized certain issues. One important issue is of nomenclature. What do we call this body of writing? Should we call it Indian writing in English, or Indian English fiction, or Indian English poetry? So, of course, this debate has been going on, and somehow the word, this expression, Indian writing in English, I have never liked this term. And the reason is that it appears a very marginal kind of category when we think about this. But the other issue is of considering English a language that is used by Indians, how Indian is English language. Actually, that is very important issue, and we can say that we have had a fairly strong, long tradition of writing in English. And I must say that not only a small percentage, but there is a big percentage of people for whom the first language is English when it comes to expression of their ideas. Sometimes I ask this question myself. See, what is my language of expression? So if I have to write something, what is my language of expression? Okay, Hindi I can speak well. Urdu supposedly my mother tongue, but I cannot use personalized Urdu. I cannot write Sanskritized Hindi. So that way, my language of Hindi or Urdu or Hindustani, in this term, is no better than that of any ordinary Indian. But if I have to write something, and if I have to write clearly, if I have to write and express my ideas, then today I will turn to English. So that leaves me actually with a very embarrassing kind of situation. I think that I know three languages, but of course, when I have to write something and I have to speak uh, or talk about ideas, especially something that relates to my subject or something that relates to intellectual discipline, then actually English comes to my rescue. So this is a tricky situation. Of course, it is also due to uh, our 200 years of history that, and of course, our schooling system and lots of other things. So Sushil, you problematize this issue very well. And there was one more thing also which he actually uh, touched, and I also noticed that thing, and that is something about publication of books, and especially publication of books in publication of poetry books. Poetry is not very fashionable, although people do read poetry, but poetry is not the favorite subject of publishers. So if you just see the publishing scene around, even fiction actually comes uh, a close second to non-fiction. And here even non-fiction of not very dry variety, but in non-fiction also, they look for a particular kind of narrative. So, for example, if you are writing non-fiction and you also have a very strong narrative, and if you notice that the style of writing non-fiction has also become very different in the last I think 2 decades or so. Where every other day you come out with a book or you see a book which is a book of non-fiction, but which has a very strong narrative. So in a way, fiction has influenced the writing of non-fiction, and that is publisher's first problem. And I'm very sure that many of your colleagues in history department, they don't find this a problem to find a new history publisher. But we in English department, if we produce literature, we run into problems. If we write poetry, we run into problems. And no wonder a person as accomplished as then Mahapatra, he also got published by small places. And that actually is the lot of poetry. Of course, if you have a book of poetry and that is prescribed in the syllabus, and there are 3,000 students who are likely to buy that book, then of course it's a different matter. But there it is not because of the quality of poetry, but rather because of its potential set that they are interested in book 300 from 3,000. So that is actually the situation. But we see that there is some important publishers are coming up, and I see one publisher, for example, Havagal, which specializes in publishing poetry, and which has also instituted a prize also, and of course, not a big prize, but kind of year book, where every year some poems are selected, they are published. That year book regularly is also becoming a mark of distinction to be published in that year. So that is things are changing. When I see the topic of this seminar, and it was very heartening to know that there were 170 papers. So of course, that means people do read poetry. That means that people do read poetry, and they also love to talk about poetry. So that is very heartening. And of course, I must say that it was very gratifying to know that this seminar is on poetry, which is a neglected genre, but of course, a very important. These days, there are very few seminars on poetry, so there are usually far too many seminars on different aspects of English studies. And not in the core areas of English studies, but on lots of related subjects. You'll see that you won't find any seminar, for example, on Indian English fiction, or you'll find seminars on transgender sexuality or climate change, many other areas. Uh, how English studies have diversified, basically, seminars also contribute. But one thing is there, sir, that if there are 70 papers, what students are reading today or what research scholars are reading today, that also shape the future of English studies, maybe 5 years from now. So if there are 20 papers, be sure that you have created the interest of these diligent people into a particular subject, and maybe in years to come, there will be more people. So in a way, they have done a marvelous job by organizing this seminar on very important things. But we come to this that poetry is a very important thing. And earlier you also brought in another very important thing, that the poetry written before the independence. Yes, there is a tendency to crash there. But I don't. Poetry requires, uh, since the 19th century, fiction has been the dominant genre. Today also we see that more and more publishers are interested in narrative being non-fiction or fiction with poetry receiving step button. Poetry requires a serious engagement, a particular kind of sensitivity, a love of God, and a certain amount of pleasure. The concept mode of the seminar very appropriately describes poetry as a perennial human endeavor towards perfection. When we teach poetry or when we teach language with poetry, even in our linguistics classes or PhD classes, there also we talk about poetry as very special need of language which requires particular kind of skill to be appreciated. So that's the seminar of skills. In the history of English writings in India, poetry is an older genre than fiction, for which many Indian writers have achieved distinction. Of course, we know many of those important poets, Rabindranath Tagore was mentioned, Dept, Nightingale, they all laid the ground for Indian literature and often not given credit. Poetry of the colonial period has been emphasized in many books. Of course, the generation which comes after it, it is the generation of poets after the independence led by Missing, and this included A.K. Ramanujan, Arpasati, Chandradas, Arun Kulakar, among others. This is usually considered more worthy of attention. And here, Jain Mahapatra it was pointed out that he started writing poetry pretty late in his career, say at the age of 40 or so, but basically he caught up with others. And one very interesting incident is narrated by my friend Manu Sattva. He has also written this. Uh, you know that when Mahapatra was a teacher of physics, and Manu Sattva was a student of physics, and whenever Jain Mahapatra returned his answer script to Sattva, Sarpati was surprised why on earth was he underlining some word or making circles or making red marks on certain words. Was he taking his physics or his English language? So that means even this professor of physics thought it important to correct the grammar of his student. So that means that germ was there. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly, this seminar is the right step in this direction. Mahapatra has many collections of poetry, it was mentioned earlier, and his poetry has appeared in all anthologies in Indian. His work has also received critical attention, though such is his order and vast his output that there is scope for more work on him. In this presentation, however, I talk about this collection of poems titled A Rain of Rights. It is not possible to touch his entire corpus, but rather this small collection. But it does have some of his most representative poems. And of course, another very important work for which he once had a given award is relationship. Let me just identify that moment when I became familiar with Jayanta Mahapatra, because that moment also is kind of reflection on the journey of Indian English poetry and the journey of Indian English literature in our premier universities. I first became familiar with Mahapatra's work in 1983-84 while preparing for an entrance test at the Allahabad University, which had a component on Indian writing English. In my own department at Allahabad University, Indian writing English, or for that matter, Indian English poetry, was not only an unheard of category, it even invited reviews from learned professors for whom even American literature was a minor literature. When I actually started my career, I talked to my professor. He said that, sir, I attended the conference on Mark Twain. I would like to organize a conference on Mark Twain in the department because I worked on Mark Twain for my doctoral thesis. He said that my term has just started. My term as chairmanship has just started, and on the other hand, in most cases, reading fiction can be a easier task than teaching it within a time constant in the university. That is because it relates to Mahapatra also. See, new criticism came out with one very interesting, much of closely. So whether they are analyzing a poem of 20 lines or we are writing something on a novel, the standard length of a paper in journal used to be about 20 pages. So that means when we are reading a poem and we are analyzing all its different aspects. So, but the issue is that when we are teaching that thing in the classroom, we are teaching a poem. So for the student, actually, your presence becomes mesmerizing because the teacher is unraveling layers after layer using that method. So that one reason why that method became very popular and one reason why that method is still popular in the class is because it has great pedagogical value. Now think about fiction and if you use that method, many modernist texts also read like poetry. But in teaching fiction, we don't have as much time. So possibly that becomes difficult. And your students also have not read fiction. But poetry can be read and at the same time can be nice. So that way, in the classroom, it can be very popular. And this method can be very popular. But that requires very serious thinking. Then we talk about context. Context is always very important in Mahabharata. The themes, motives, and allusions in his poetry, and their structure can only be discovered in a retrospect. His poems can also be read at different levels. However, discovery of a context can be complicated. The immediate context of a poem may not be easily discoverable. Even the political and cultural allusions, explicit and implicit, can be lost on many readers because they give different horizons of expression. Now, this is also a very important point about reading literature. How much context can be recovered? And here I must just give one example of my reading of the text about 20 years ago and my reading of the same text just 2 years ago. And the text was Somerset Maugham's famous novel, The Razor's Edge. The Razor's Edge. I read this novel before we were hooked to the internet. Of course, I made sense of the story, made sense of characters, made sense of Somerset Maugham's irony. But when I read this book recently, I was trying to Google each and every reference there. For example, if there was a reference to a particular restaurant. Now, when I look, when I looked at those references, for example, a restaurant in France, and it was me, then I realized, oh, this was a restaurant where Sartre also used to sit. When I looked at the brand of a cigarette, which is mentioned by Somerset Maugham, then there was a very interesting history of that cigarette. When I looked at the name of particular wine, then there was a whole chapter on wine. So that is where the context is simply unlimited, and it can be very enriching experience. And it is not simply that. If there is a reference to a particular place to Jagannath temple in, for example, in Mahapatra, and you simply Google that, both of us, you know, but many people don't know. For example, there is a Western reader who does not know that. So in that case, there is the image, and there is also the description. So that in reading poetry or reading fiction or reading literature for that matter has immense possibilities now, and possibly the absent context in a poem or in a work of literature can be recovered in a much more comprehensive manner today than it was possible earlier. And I think our students can learn this technique that whenever there is a reference, anything in a poem, then obviously that word is important. Because at the end of the day, any poem is a matter of craftsmanship. So if there is a word there, if there is a particular syllable there, if there is an image there, it has been put there deliberately because it is not something which is there on an inspired moment. It has been thought over. So when we see that Mahapatra's poetry is full of the cultural and religious richness of India. Hindu myths and rituals provide a framework for his poems in all his collections. And of course, I also read quite a bit what others have written, and I happen to see a very interesting opinion book. Vasant K. Shahani is of the view that naked earth, and I am quoting his word, naked earth and the mythological, symbolistic or aesthetic structures only related to that naked earth of which Odisha and India form a significant part is the main focus of his creativity. And we can see that Odisha's temples and towns, the ambience and atmosphere and many religious sites of Odisha. However, that is also sometimes treated with some irony in many things, especially if you see Arena of Life. In Samsara, for example, there is this reference. A fair Brahmin lives hotly by the country. The whole poem is the whole poem, but I am not reading the whole poem. I am just putting the relevant line. Similarly, when I read in the poem The Exile, the long-haired priest of Kali, who still packs stolen jasmines into goddesses' morning art. In another poem, looking at the races, the poem makes an ironic allusion to the story of Idea. We know that Idea has been the subject of numerous books, numerous readings, and whether it is Rabindranath Tagore or even the paintings of the Raja Ravi Verma, they impacted me. What kind of difference is there to Idea in Mahapatra? In appearances, the poem makes an ironic allusion to the story of Ahilya, a subject of many retelling in literature and fiction, including one by Tagore and Raja Ravi Verma. Quote, the lonely dawn of a stupid fairy tale, where once some holy thirst healed a woman's stream. Another poem is Lit, and there is the poet's centric reference to the religious rigidity. The poet's visit to the temple is marked by a tentativeness. In the word, I dare not go into the dark sanctum. His ensured daring and tentativeness make the bearded certain men asking from the unknown. Many of the poems capture a scene, an attitude, and a perception. Main temple street is the title of the poem, brings out his irony by the indifference shown to critics and making knowledge on the temple street. The paradox lies in the unending rhythm of life on the temple, where things are moving all the time and yet nothing seems to go away from sight. The more things, the more things change, the more they stay the same, said French writer Dept. Listening to a prayer captures the significance of this. Another point, listening to a prayer captures the significance of the sound of temple bell. Its syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship with countless people. One simple sound. I also noticed another very interesting facet to this poem. The mythical historical consciousness of the poet interspersed with a tragic awareness of the force of history also at work in most poems. And especially you can see in this long poem relationship where it is actually what sides have to be taken apart. If you see, for example, his reference to Kalinga War, to Ashoka, his view is that possibly enough, Ashoka did not atone enough. That is the view. That is that tragic history of Ashoka, that tragic history of Odisha, and its painful realization that informs the idea of this particular work. Mahapatra also appears alert to continuity reality of the exploitation of women, elusive gender justice, and the oppressive patriarchal structure. These women, this is the title of the poem, these women recognizes the quiet and unacknowledged labor of women in Indian households, developing visual business of alternative households through red leaf on a reed bed, and onions and herbs hung out to dry. The poet asks questions, what do they live for beyond the grave of innocent prayer? The sea do, and they close their eyes everywhere to get him. Another poem, Hunger, brings out the unpleasant reality of child prostitution caused by poverty. The poem captures a fisherman's painful situation where he has to push his 15-year-old daughter into prostitution. Montage or editing is an integral feature of cinema. It has been considered a specific language of cinema. Classic Soviet filmmaker Eisenstein is hailed as the greatest advocate of montage in cinema. How parts are organized into a whole defines the nature of cinema. On the other hand, presentation of pictorial elements has long been established in poetic criticism, and use of vivid images has traditionally characterized the nature of poetry. Mahapatra often uses the modernist technique of montage in his poems, where a poem consists of pictures capturing scenes in their rich detail. His poem Moon, that's the title of the poem, progresses through images of drummers, rain, clear Durga carried by 24 tired men, and singing women. The whole poem actually puts these images, very concrete images, and actually the poem says a lot through those images. And it also has that kind of pictorial quality also. Another important quality of Mahapatra's poetry is his sense of structure in the poem. And if you read, for example, a poem, and if you reread a poem, one will discover that certain words are juxtaposed with other words, certain lines actually counterbalance other lines, and certain images also counterbalance other images. That just suggests his craftsmanship.
Summer captures the moment of a girl child's life and her uncertain future. In the poem line 5, and that is, who needs the future, is counterbalanced by line 10, the home will never be hers. Similarly, a short second stanza of the poem, under the mango tree, the cold ash of a deserted fire. It is counterbalanced by the last stanza, in a corner of her mind, a living green mango drops softly to earth. The poem is also structured around the element of fire and earth. There are also some perennial themes actually in poetry, and which only poetry can achieve, which poetry can actually exploit. It is said that what fiction cannot do, poetry can do. And poetry can often capture many elusive ideas. And one such elusive idea is, or one such elusive presence is silence. How to capture silence? How to talk about silence? And you know that Wordsworth wrote his famous poem Address to Silence, in which he talked about silence calm, venerable majesty, guardian of contemplation and of love. Thy voice, in marvelous words of nature, speaks, not to the ear, but to the eye of man. In poem after poem, one can see image of silence, or the presence of silence, or the motive of silence in Mahapatra's poem. And of course, this fact has been noted by many other commentators also who have written on Mahapatra. So it recurs as a motive in his poetry in almost all his collections. Just to give a few examples, in a poem titled Silence, the speaker reads and watches silence before it fully overcomes him. There are different shades of silence in the poem. His loneliness is one of them. Another poem is Dawn, the first poem in a reign of rights. It evokes the idea of silence. In another poem, Moving, rain, in fact, in another poem, Rain, the deep stillness of the valley is mentioned. So I read this sentence. In moving, rain hammers the deep stillness of the valley. By the way, rain also is a very important motive in this poetry. There is also the dumb silence of a God's curved eye in this poem. One more interesting thing is that we know that T.S. Eliot wrote a poem, Macavity, the Mystery Cat. And many other poets also, you can see any number of poets who are not simply writing serious stuff, they also try their hands at something lighter. And we can see many lighter poems also of Mahapatra. And one such poem, of course, is Sunburst. Mahapatra also shows his skill at writing light-hearted narrative poems, observing everyday chaos with a certain mischievousness. In Sunburst, the speaker knows the friendly crowd's interest, and young schoolgirls embarrass books to see the act of a hummed bull's copulation with a cow, a common happening on an ordinary day. The response of the owner of the cow who walks his impregnated cow along is just matter of fact. So there are various responses. There are various responses to this. Though Mahapatra's poetry has generally received praise for its progressive outlook and craftsmanship, critical opinion has not been blind to some aspects of his poetry. I think one of your colleagues, Professor Madhusudan Prasad, is unhappy with an unpleasant wordiness in many of his poems, or his hasty use of words, his repetitiveness, and his tendency in some poems to jumble up numerous ideas, making the poem structurally loose. That is his words. His criticism of Mahapatra reminds one of Matthew Arnold's criticism of Wordsworth's inability to separate his good poems from the bad. Editors of Mahapatra's poem have certainly a task at hand. Another critic, Ayappa Panikar, charges him for his eagerness to assert his Indianness in Indian summer poem. And another critic, one Ray Chaudhary, while praising Prasad for his sympathy with women on the margin, finds Mahapatra's stance in his poem Temple a bit problematic in that he uses the image of an evil ogress Putana instead of the myth of the goddess Durga and Kali, the archetypes of feminine power. He also finds some blind spots in Mahapatra's world news, especially his view about patriarchal ideology. Literary criticism on Mahapatra has to engage with these issues afresh. Now, I move to a related part of this particular conference, and it is not only Mahapatra, but the concept note also mentions some very important things. The concept note of the seminar mentions three interesting sub-themes: poetry as transdisciplinarity, decolonizing English through poetry, and Mahapatra and other poets. Mahapatra and other poets. So these three sub-themes are also very important because I'm very sure, Sushilji, the conference is not simply confined to Mahapatra, it is rather, it goes beyond Mahapatra also. Maybe the influence of Mahapatra or maybe the influence of Mahapatra and many other poets on the work of younger poets. Or if not the influence, then certainly their presence being inspirational for other poets. So here I take these three important points and I talk a different subject. Of the many poets from this part, I will mention four English poets. All professors of English, sir, all bilingual, all translators also, and probably that say something, and all from North India. You see, when I was a student at Allahabad Muslim University, I carried this notion that South Indians know English and North Indians are usually very poor at the use of English. And when one student actually scored very good marks in my class, everyone thought that he was South Indian. He was not South Indian. So here I am just talking about this. Of these four poets, though not necessarily inspired by Mahapatra, their work, or for that matter, the work of other younger poets, can be considered part of a tradition. The not T.S. Eliot speaks so highly of the relationship between tradition and the individual talent. And these four professor poets include, because I am familiar with them, I have interacted with them, I have heard them, and I also followed their work. Professor Sukrita Paul Kumar, Professor Sushil Kumar Sharma, Professor Raman Kumar, and Professor Samir Afid. One from Delhi University, one of course from Allahabad University, one from Lucknow University, and one from Aligarh University. Now there is something here about this choice. They all have translated. They all have studied English, and they all are professors of English. So I'll just very briefly talk about this aspect also. Madam Kundra wrote, the brain appears to possess a special area which we might call poetic memory, and this records everything that charms or touches us, that makes our lives beautiful. It's a beautiful sentence that we have something called poetic memory. When I think about this poetic memory, I am also inclined to believe that not everyone possesses that poetic memory, or at any rate, not everyone can transmute that poetic memory into art forms, into works of poetry. And I see it on an everyday basis. Of the four family members in my family, I'm the only non-poet, because I can tell you, when in the school actually, sometimes teachers ask students to just recite a poem or something. My children never read anyone else's poem. They always compose their own. So thing is that, but I could never compose even 5 lines, 4 lines, and that's why I was not a great lover either. Okay. So here we say that sorry, sir, I envy you. I envy you. I don't know, but I envy Sushil. He wants to be a great lover. So just very briefly, uh, so this actually poetic memory is so important. Sushil Kumar Sharma's collection of poems, The Door is Half Open, and I have also seen this, and of course, I must congratulate you here on this platform for these wonderful opinions on his poetry, because it is serious engagement with his poetry that so many readers actually wrote such beautiful essays on his poetry. And sir, this fame is so rare. The door half open includes poems on ordinary, everyday events and realizations, but touched by his poetic memory. Whether it is the working of conscience, beautiful poem, captured in beautiful sceneries, or the witty and satirical expression of disappointment with modern socializing crisis. I love that poem. Or a routine, which is exactly not routine, but holds surprises in routine. When I was reading this poem, and here I would just, I was reading this poem, and I was also thinking about one very interesting concept when we read literature. Stanley E. Fish has given the concept of affective stylistics. By affective stylistics, actually, what he means is that he is not interested in telling what does a sentence mean, but rather he is interested in telling what does a sentence do. So this means that when we are reading, we are revising our response. One word relates us to another word, and that word relates to yet another word, and we have to keep the memory of previous words to make sense of the complete sentence. And of course, the same goes about longer text. So that means this revision of response is arrived at after a very slow reading. This process is very similar to seeing the deviation of a ball in a cricket match, when on first actually glimpse you miss that, and only when it is shown in an action replay you see the deviation, or for example the tennis ball also. Now similarly a poem also, it requires very slow reading, and it also requires a kind of revision of your response as you move from one word to another, as you move from one sentence to another. And if I think about this poem, for example, Sushil, this poem, routine, uh, suddenly everything appeared so routine, and then suddenly things started changing. And then we see that there are surprises in a poem, or there is an element of wonder in a poem. Now, certainly this wonder is not wonder in the great sense of the word, where you say that, oh, this happened. Here we are talking about wonder or surprise in a more relaxed manner, something which happens in a poem. So this poem captures this. I must also say that there is also an impulse toward decolonization in many of his poems. And of course, rooted in classical Indian learning, and of course his familiarity with Indian learning, there is this impulse, and that also is there in many poems. When I talk about the other poet, unfortunately, Ramji is present here. Rami's poetic memory also transformed the forgettable, the painful, and the traumatic into beautiful forms. I am familiar with one of her collections, The Day We Went Strawberry Picking in Scarborough, a collection of 80 odd poems which include abstract and theoretical poems, deceptively simple experimental prose poems, eye rhymes, and unpunctuated poems. And this collection offers a rich cerebral feast to the reader, mixing memory, nostalgia, and the contradictions of contemporary life. I'll just mention one or two points. For example, emotions, moments, and persons conjure up her memories. But the prettiest girl on the campus, this is the title of her poem, a campus love poem, presents the memory of a goddess that launched 100 poems, but paradoxically it had both a promise and a curse. as the prettiest girl at the walk of a rainbow, and people saw the Smita Patil in her. In Ifat, the pure one, the speaker remembered the face, smile, and friendly persona of Ifat, a girl who brought joy to her, but is now in heaven where there is no space for grief. A rare poem, it celebrates the memories of her father, which touch all elements, air, fire, water, and earth in her present life, according a kind of immortality to her personal memory. For you, Virginia relieves the suicide of the one who reserved happiness for another life. And just a a sentence piece about the poets. Sukrita's poetry also in fact touches many ordinary everyday events. And she's also a bilingual poet. And the last in this list was a Sami Rafir. She writes nature poetry and especially the particular subject called Anthropocene. So that is the poetry of actually Anthropocene and her collection Women Under the Tree. Most poems are about trees and nature. Now, when we look at this entire picture, we can see that it is not actually the influence of Mahapatra or others, but certainly a tradition actually includes many people. The tradition includes poets who are writing today, and of course, those who were writing during the colonial period. So, in a way, when Tagore was writing, or when Aurobindo was writing, in a way, we all are connected to that tradition in some way. When we read poetry, we learn also the craft, and we also actually grasp certain things. So that is how, in fact, this entire journey continues. I am very happy that Sushil ji organized this conference on poetry, and it also gave us some very important moments for introspection. And lastly, I would end by narrating one incident. There are many things actually which could have been said in this paper. I just wanted to make a few points. And I am also reminded of a friend who always wrote his seminar papers in a train. When he presented his paper at one conference, somebody asked him from the audience, "Sir, you have not mentioned that point." He said, "I wish the journey had been longer." Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enriching and elaborate address. It has certainly left an indelible impression on the minds of our participants and faculty members alike. Thank you so much once again, sir. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have Professor K.G. Srivastava, the luminary amongst us, as our chief guest. Professor Krishna Gopal Srivastava is a former professor and head of Department of English and Modern European Languages at the University of Allahabad. He has held the offices of Dean, Faculty of Arts, and Vice Chancellor, University of Allahabad. Professor Srivastava was British Council Scholar at the University of Glasgow. He has published several books and articles in India, England, and America. His two articles on Aristotle's doctrine of tragic catharsis, which appeared in the British Journal of Aesthetics, brought him international fame. His rendering of Ode to a Nightingale stands displayed in the reading room of the Oriental section of the Cambridge University Library. Professor K.G. Srivastava has successfully translated into Hindi works of Sophocles, Kalidas, Keats, and has completed a UGC-sponsored Encyclopedia of Comparative Poetics. The list is quite long. So I welcome you, sir, to please come and share your pearls of wisdom. Sorry.
Sir Sushil Kumar Sharma, Sir Saxena, Sir Siddiqui, Sir Pandey from BHU, Professor A.N. Bedi, and all the teachers presently active in the department or retired, and students. I am accidentally here. Accidentally because the Vice Chancellor, for some reason, is not present, and Sushil Kumar Sharma invited me to serve as the substitute of Sangeeta Srivastava. It is a real pleasure for me to be here. Since I am here in the capacity of President of the inaugural session, I would like to start with an invocation to Lord Ganesh. Although Saraswati has been invoked, she is the goddess of learning, but the seminar is a kind of yajna. And Bharat Muni in his Natya Shastra has provided for invocations to gods for warding off evil powers that may be around the theatre. So, my address will start with an invocation to God Ganesh, who is worshipped in the West as Janus. Sir William Jones informs that Janus was worshipped among the Romans, and he was the equivalent of Ganesh. Anyway, I believe that Sanskrit is the proper vehicle of performing this function. It can create a real atmosphere for yajnas like the session on Jayant Mahapatra. So let me invoke the aid of Ganesh. जेतुं यस्त्रिपुरं हरेण हरिणा व्याजात् बलिं बध्नता स्रष्टुं वारि भवो भवेन भुवनं शेषेण धर्तुं धरा पार्वत्या महिषासुरप्रमथने सिद्धाधिपैः सिद्धये ध्यातः पंचशरेण विश्वजितये पायात्सनादानः विघ्नध्वांत निवारणैकतरणिः विघ्नाटवी मध्यसु. Anyway, गजाननं भूतगणादिसेवितं कपित्थजम्बूफलचारुभक्षणम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारकं नमामि विघ्नेश्वरपादपङ्कजम्. वन्दे वन्दारुमन्दार इन्दुभूषणनन्दनम् अमन्दानन्दसन्दोह बन्धुरं सिन्धुराननम्. Now, Professor Sharma had started a discourse on Indian English. Why Indian English? I am of the view that language can never be any barrier if you have genius and talents. The first Englishman who had come to India in 1586, Father Stevens, he wrote an epic in Konkani. This is very intriguing. He found that Konkani was the sweetest language of the world. How he mastered it is a puzzle. But Christ Puranam, this is the work that the first Englishman who landed on this soil of India wrote a whole epic, Christ Puranam in Konkani. When Apollonius at China, Philostratus informs us, when he came to India, he was the contemporary of Christ. And in Takshashila, he met Iarchus, the Indian sage, and they had a very long exchange. Iarchus, Philostratus informs through Apollonius, spoke Greek so fluently and so flawlessly that Apollonius was wondering. So I don't think that we should feel inhibited by language. If Jayant Mahapatra can express himself in English or Indian English and can communicate his feelings to the people at large throughout the world, that should be welcome. There should be no problem. When I was head of the department, I had arranged a seminar on Indian English literature and how can it serve India. Yes, English is still easy. Unless English is adopted as the language of communication, how can you communicate with the people at large? Sushil Sharma, if he had written in Hindi, would he have communicated himself to a larger audience of the world? You have this volume. He has been read in many countries. I am proud of my department, especially today when it has got its earlier strength. It used to be a teacher of 45. When I joined this department in 1978, it had 45 teachers. And now perhaps the number has been larger than 40. In one assembly, I had observe that the English department, Allahabad University, is the largest English department. And then Vice Chancellor Mehta, hey, English largest in the whole country? Yes. Yes, in the entire country, English department is the largest. However, when I went to Aligarh, I found that the Department of English there too, at least in the year when I was there. No, I had been there much earlier. So today the department is so strong. Madras University had only 3 teachers in 1981. Calcutta University has no English department, a separate English department. It is a department of languages. So no separate English department. But Calcutta University English department is very famous. I believe that the present English department of Allahabad University is really the largest in the country. What is the total strength of the teachers? Huh? You are perhaps including your college's teachers also. That is a question to be decided in a roundtable conference. I don't think Aligarh University English department is larger than the English department of Allahabad. If that is the case, I should congratulate Mr. Siddiqui. But I don't believe. And Pandeyji is there. The issue too can feel proud of its large department. Now, I find that the word forming needs to be elaborated here. This is a very striking word, and Professor Siddiqui and not even Sushil Sharma throw any light on this. This goes to prove that the Department of English is very alive, very up to date. The word has been used as a verb. We have been using the word poem only as a noun, and here it has been used as a verb. And this has to be discussed. The word is derived ultimately from Greek. Poem. Poem is the root from which the word poem in noun as well as verb has been formed. Poem, to poem is to make. Poem means to make. And poets are so called because they are makers. And Aristotle in his Poetics informs us. Poets are poets simply because they are makers. So poem is making, creating. And what are they creating? Creating worlds of their own. Every poet, every poem creates its own world. Even a haiku creates worlds. And there are poets and poets. How to judge the worth of a poet? That is the question. Jayant Mahapatra is a poet, but English department, Allahabad University can feel proud of the fact that it has many Jayant Patras. And Sushil Kumar Sharma himself is one such name. Then A.M. Vedi in front of me. He is a poet. Sanjay Datta Roy and A.K. Mehrotra is an internationally recognized poet. Smita Agrawal, Deepika Srivastav. So, yes, and many others whom we don't know. These are there, and it is just a matter of chance. Someday, Sushil Kumar Sharma may be commemorated in the manner that Mahapatra is being. And I would request him to organize a seminar on the Indian English poets living in Allahabad. Whether they have retired from the department or still. So, thank you. I love to go through it. But you please make a promise to me that you will very soon organize a seminar on the Indian English poets of Allahabad and let the whole world know the worth of poets. How to judge the greatness of a poet? That is the question. There are many criteria, and one such criteria is the touchstone of Matthew Arnold. Touchstone method of Matthew Arnold, where he has propounded the theory of high seriousness. On this word high seriousness, I would like to share with you my meeting one English department teacher, Professor Raghupati Sahai Firak. He was teacher of this department and he was also awarded Sahitya Academy. and Jnanpith also, Sahitya Academy and Jnanpith. I had come, then I was a lecturer at the University of Gorakhpur, and I wanted my Raja Vidas, the Hindi rendering of Sophocles' Oedipus Tyrannus, to be published. And one Rais of Gorakhpur, Mohan Sahai, from whose family Oedipus Sahai Firak came, wrote a letter introducing me to Firak Sahib. And I used the word high seriousness. Firak Sahib stopped me, said, no, it is not high seriousness, it is higher seriousness. When I really consulted that essay of Arnold, study of, to my utter surprise, the first occurrence is of higher seriousness. Higher seriousness is the first rendering of Arnold. Ispodaios is the Greek of poetics from which higher seriousness has been derived by Arnold. But that is higher seriousness. But in Clint Crook's History of Criticism, high seriousness, Matthew Arnold later himself uses high seriousness, but the first occurrence is higher seriousness. I marveled at the close reading of Oedipus Sahai, and I corrected myself. In fact, the passage has been taken from chapter 9 of the poetics, and it is in the comparative degree. Poetry and history are being compared with each. And Aristotle says that poetry is more universal than history. So, comparative degree, but later on, high seriousness became more popular. So, high seriousness could be a very valid criterion. Sharmaji referred to A.K. Mahaptra's observation in regard to Aurobindo's Savitri. Mahapatra is a poet, there is no doubt about it. But his critical observations cannot be accepted as they are. Savitri of Aurobindo has been treated as a rival of the Paradise Lost. I believe if I had written an article on high seriousness, which Allahabad University, Professor Ansari, teacher of Professor Siddiqui, He was enamored of that article and he had published in the Aligarh Journal of English Studies. And Arnold has refused to acknowledge most of the English poets as real poets. Shakespeare, Milton, Keats, Wordsworth, these are the poets who pass this test, but most of the English poets fail. We can be very rigorous if we apply this. And I believe this would serve as the real criterion. I would like to recite certain pieces from Hindi and Sanskrit. There is a poem on Basant, Rituraj, by King of Rima, Raghuraj Singh. वसुधाधर में वसुधाधर में वसुधाधर में वसुधा में बसे अलिवृंदन में अलिवृंदन में अलिवृंदन में अतिशय सरसे ये हारन में हुरिहारन में हिमहारन में रजराज बसे ब्रह्मवारन वारन 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 वसंत. Now, this can charm us by its use of Yamakalanka. But what is the outcome of it? Is celebrating the advent of spring season. But there is no feeling, real feeling of the advent of Basant. It is only a jugglery of words that Raghuraj Singh has indulged. I don't recognize it as a great poem. If poets would write, it can be called a trash. But charms, it has charms of jugglery of words, it has. I like to recite here my rendering of the 18th sonnet of Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more tender. करूंगा ग्रीष्म ऋतु से मैं कभी उपमित भला तुम. करूंगा ग्रीष्म ऋतु से मैं कभी उपमित भला तुमको. अरे तुम शांत तर हो और मृदुतर सर्वथा उससे. हवाएं ज्येष्ठ की बरबर देती रौंद कलियों को. तथा है खिन्न रहता ग्रीष्म अपने अल्प जीवन से. कभी तो गगन का वह नेत्र रहता है अधिक दीपित. प्रभा स्वर्णिम है रहती किंतु उसकी प्रायशः धूमिल है. होता हर सलोना रूप जग में क्वचित अवसादित. कभी संयोग वश या फिर नियम से सचल में. लेकिन ग्रीष्म तेरा कभी भी मंदा न तो होगा मधुरमा रिक्त, वह जिससे लसित है तू। जब मनुज में श्वास है बाकी, नयन में ज्योति है जब तक, रहेगा काव्य यह अक्षुण से तुम अमर। In Devariya, there was a poet of Bhojpuri called Moti Diye. He was an MA, but he preferred writing Diye after his name. Moti Diye. He had contributed many songs like Nadiya Ke Paar, the older one, not the later. But he was a teacher of logic. And he has rendered all the 154 sonnets of Shakespeare. So my students at Gorakhpur brought his volume, and when I sent my rendering of sonnet 18 to him, he said his rendering can never match. But that teacher of logic in an intermediate college, rendering all the 154 sonnets of Shakespeare, really praiseworthy. It is a chance that people have not noticed. It must be noticed. And I would like to recite here the opening verse of Ode to a Nightingale. Yes, yes. My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense as though of hemlock I have done, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed and leafy pulses. It's not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou light winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green, and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full throated peace. उर्मिला वेदना ग्रस्त है और चेतना पीड़ित मेरी, तंद्राशील शून्यता द्वारा मानो मैंने पी ली कोई कालकूट की शीशी अथवा निद्रा की जड़ बूटी, किंचित पल पहले और फलतः बीथी नद में स्थित पाई। इसका कारण नहीं कि मैं जलता हूं तेरे सुखद भाग्य से, अपितु सुखातिशल्य वह जिसका अनुभव करता तब समृद्धि में तू जो करती मुक्त कंठ से गान निरंतर मधुर नास का, हे वन परी तरल पंखों की गाती हो जो पंचम सुर से, मधुर रागनी से संप्लावित किसी क्षेत्र जो है हरित बीज वृक्षों से और घनी है छाया। Now I learned that Jayant Mahapatra has rendered many Uriya classics into English. I believe some scholars come forward with his rendering of the Uriya words into English and discuss it. Tomorrow then the professor will be doing that. Thank you, thank you. Then that would be really delightful. Mr. Sharma is all the time reminding me of home calls for me, and I wanted to uh, go on, but then I had to cut it short, and perhaps tomorrow you might hear me in a smaller room. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your stimulating talk. We all stand enlightened. It has always been an absolute pleasure to listen to you. And on behalf of our head and department, we promise to organize a seminar on Indian English poets of Allahabad very soon. And now, I request Dr. Debashish Pati to come and propose the vote of thanks.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Sabar. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I could pour my gratitude to all of you. I'm sorry I cannot. But I'm reminded of at least one couplet which I must dedicate to our chief guest of the occasion, Professor Krishna Gopal Srivastava. In small proportions, we just briefly see